Hey everybody, we are live. It's myself, Samson Folk, Trey pulling up, the namesake of the podcast, and Blake Murphy. Big show over at Sportsnet. We'll talk a little bit, some announcements, some exciting stuff. He makes a face, but it's a show at
Oh,
least.
no, it's a show. I just don't want to talk about myself. We're here to
Oh,
talk about the
true,
Jared Rodens of the world.
true. So here's the thing: we had something. Sofia Serrano says Timu Caruso, retired OVO bodyguard turned basketball writer, and no Jay Trey. We've all been roasted for the intro of the podcast. It's myself, it's Blake, it's Trey. We're here to talk basketball. There's a bunch of stuff. Vince had it was like the Christmas Eve of his jersey retirement, I guess. S was there. He'll be hopping on the podcast to talk about it in just a little bit. Jacoby Walter is injured. Emmanuel Quickly is wearing odd wrist gear, apparently. We're looking forward to training camp. We're looking forward to media day. We're looking forward to a whole bunch of stuff. We're getting closer and closer to the season. Blake, how the hell are you? We'll start there.
Yeah, I'm good, man. The Emmanuel Quickly wrist brace thing cut me off guard a little bit today, watching the videos and everything of this. Obviously, the Jacoby Walter news this morning as well. But yeah, man, I'm really excited. This time of year is always very cool. Generally, like probably the best time of year as a sports fan in general, depending on how you feel about like golf and the NCAA. I guess maybe you could make the late March argument, but yeah, man, it's good. Shifting gears now from Jays to Raptors, and because the Jays did us the favor of being really bad this year, I'll get to be at media day and be at training camp for the first time in years.
That'll be, I know you're not taking the same train as us, but myself, Lewis, you, S, and us three, we're hopping on that train. We're going to try and do a live podcast from the, the
You
train to
can't
Montreal.
if check those seats, man, because if I was on the Via and I'm in a quiet section and you guys are ripping a pod off, I'd be mad, man. I'm trying to play my out of the park baseball quietly and focus in on my off season, try to get my player development where it needs to be, and you guys are riffing. I don't know, man. That's worse than being in the imagine the 4-seater and like someone stuck with you three. That's worse than being with 3 kids.
My dream is that Grange loves trains and he's
He's
like trying to relax
he
and
is
we go
on
over
my
there.
flight. Sorry to
Hey,
spoil that for you.
Mikey! Yeah, okay, well, that's fine enough. Anyway, a bunch of stuff has been happening before S comes in and gives us the live on the scene reporting, etc. What do you make of all the Vince Carter stuff? Let's start there.
Yeah, I mean it's cool. It was a little weird walking around today. I'm like, is that Vince Carter jersey? Like, is that someone's jersey or is this? And then I see on social media there's like people posting, they're all over the place. The Raptors obviously posting it. I don't know. That part of it was whatever. I think it's cool to tie the announcement into something like, hey, his foundation 20 years ago built these courts. The courts look unbelievable. If you haven't seen the like above head footage of the courts out at Dixon Park, they look amazing. So that part's great. I wasn't out there, but the clips of it look cool. I think probably the most important thing for the 70% of what I've seen from people is like, yep, either this is amazing, let's do it, or this was inevitable, so let's just lean in. And then like 10% of people who no matter what happens are not going to want this. And then there's 20% of people that are like, could he just like make good on, like, could he just like say something? And at least he like kind of got there today a little bit with the, I know that some people are iffy about this and that's okay. So maybe we get a little bit more of that. But I think it's good, man. Anytime you have a reason to celebrate basketball in the city and do things like refurbish public courts and just get everyone together and appreciate basketball, I think at the end of the day, that's the most important thing there.
I had the purple jersey. Trey, I've seen him wear the purple jersey. Did you have the purple jersey?
I have never had a Vince Carter jersey.
Wow.
I don't think I had a purple jersey at all, actually. I think my first jersey was when they had the red and they went to Spain for preseason and they had the like Spanish flag down the side. A Jose Calderon, one of those was, I think, my first Raptors jersey.
That's on brand. Trey, thoughts on the Vinsanity of it all?
Yeah. Well, Vince is, aside from like maybe LeBron James, probably my favorite athlete ever. And
Wow.
I really
Not even
enjoyed
Josh Allen, Tom Brady.
I'm not a Bills fan at all, bro.
All right.
The Pats ain't the greatest, but we'll be back. But I really enjoyed how they connected like the importance of him like within the actual community and tying in his importance to like basketball as a nation. It's really cool to see that. And although like probably this is probably like the most like contentious jersey retirement we've probably seen in the NBA. I think it makes the most sense for him to be the first person that they retire, just connecting basketball to him and the nation, and also it being the 30th season. All of it makes sense to me.
That's kind of what I want to hit on before S comes in. And to go back to Blake on this, the Raptor show was announced with you and Matt Bonner as hosts. Chapo wants to chime in, of course, but being that it's the 30th anniversary, the show changing and you guys having a former player who's like, he wasn't there for the longest amount of time, but he kind of left an indelible mark as far as like being the guy who rode the subway. What are you excited about as far as like having Matt Bonner as a co-host and where you guys take the show?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to have one of those purple jerseys and Matt Bonner hanging in the studio. Like he was part of that era, right? I think, look, in the 30th anniversary, that's an important component there. Have a guy who played 2 years with this team and played against them for another 10 years. But more to the show's actual point, like, look, Samson, you're one of the very best at like breaking down the X's and O's and things like that. Trey, you're one of the best scouting guys, things like that.
What the hell is going on here?
Will and Alex, Will and Alex are like the best you can get for a chemistry and personality driven show that also has really good, really smart basketball analysis. There are all these things, but one thing that the Raptors space doesn't really have right now is a former player voice on one of those shows. And you know, I can do the analytics stuff, I can do the cap stuff, whatever. I didn't play in the NBA. I did not play even close to I didn't even get to play in the media game because of my appendix. That's how far away I am from having been an NBA player. So I'm excited to like, lean on Matt's stories from his time with the Raptors, from his time with the Spurs. Absolutely. We've got some music taste overlap. We're going to bring back the Sandwich Hunter and find some spots in the city and things like that. I'm excited for all of that. But when you look at the entire Raptors media landscape and how we all, you know, I don't know, whatever, despite what people on Reddit think, we're not all like in competition with each other. It's all part of like one kind of media package. I do think Matt is going to bring something that we don't have on a Raptors Republic, on a other show I haven't had on my shows in the past, baseball or basketball, which is that ex-player voice, someone who's lived it, someone who can, you know, on media day, we chop it up with Grady, someone who knows those shooting drills, who's gone through a shooting slump, who's had to refigure it out on the fly and things like that. I think that's going to be invaluable, not just for me, you know, to be able to set him up for that stuff, but when we look at all of us as a whole space, to have that perspective in there, I think is cool.
Yeah. Okay. So to bring someone in who myself as
I didn't realize you were going to do this. Okay.
Yeah. Here we go. Another spurned co-host who we didn't make the cut. And yes, Reddit. I guess we're all in competition, of course. S, you were the man on the scene.
Yeah.
Regarding the Vince Carter, like the Christmas Eve of his jersey retirement, we saw him shed tears. We saw there was a lot of emotions. You spoke to him for a little bit. Can you give us the recap, as it were, the rundown?
First of all, Dixon Park and Rexdale, your ends, right?
That's correct.
And he was there, kind of. Obviously, the emotion was a lot of it, but the foundation was a big part of what they were trying to do with MLSE Launchpad and kind of raising money for that area generally. I think one thing that it was not expected was how much Vince would speak. Like, he had this whole 4 or 5 minute speech that he did that I'm not sure has made it to social media yet, but it was basically like, hey, I embrace this. I love that we're doing this, and I'm glad that I'm doing it back here in the same spot that we opened up the court in the first place. He just felt like he was very emotional overall, which, given the circumstance, of course, just a very cool moment. Very, very cool moment. And number 15 going up in the rafters, officially confirmed. Sources say confirmed.
Does anybody have quick off the dome? Who's your favorite 15 besides Vince Carter? Probably Garbajosa for me.
Amir. I'm going to go Amir. Yeah.
Oh, I should have went Amir.
Yeah.
I feel like
not even close now. For me, man. Amir's the guy. Also, there are only 6 options. Like, what do
Greg
you guys
Monroe?
Pull at? Greg Monroe. So we said Amir, Garbajosa, Vince, obviously, Greg Monroe, and there are 2 more.
Eric Moreland.
Eric Moreland. There you go, J-Lou. 1 more.
Joey Graham,
number 1 overall pick.
No, Joey Graham was 14.
14 was Joey Graham.
Anthony Bennett.
Yeah.
Let's go. So yeah, the Vince stuff was fun. Are there any other tidbits you want to give us about?
He he was asked about the Nets thing, and he was like, "Hey, how do you feel about the fact that I?" Well, no, someone I can't remember who exactly asked him about this, but he basically said, "I knew the Nets thing was happening, but I let them know that I was going to give the opportunity to Toronto." So he requested for Brooklyn not to do the retirement early on in the season, so that Toronto would have a chance to do it first. And I think that's a big part of this whole thing. Like, there's so much conversation about, oh, Brooklyn was planning it, all that type. It seems as though this was in the works for a very long time.
What did you make of his kind of acknowledging that not everyone is 1,000% on board yet, and then moving forward from it? Like, probably an important component of what these next couple months will be. But yeah, what'd you make of that aspect of it?
I think that was the messaging across the board. Masai said the same thing. It's time to heal. It's time to move on. Vince mentioned the same thing. Even Mayor Olivia Chow also said the same thing in her speech. And so I think there's just sort of this across the board messaging where it's like, hey, let's just use this as a moment to celebrate. Yes, we understand the past was the past, and that didn't work out the way many people wanted it to. There was wrongs on both sides. And in his speech, Vince said, like, look, mistakes were made. Things didn't work out the way we didn't want it to. And, he's going to do like the passive way to talk about it. But he also said that he was going to make a better speech for his Hall of Fame. So maybe we'll get more clarity on October 13th or 14th or whenever it is.
I want so badly to be like, for that Hall of Fame speech. So T-Mac and Dr. J are going to be there, right, for him?
Yep.
And like how, if you read Alex Wong's book, especially, you get a little insight into, Vince wanted a different leadership. He did not want the Rod Babcock era. And that obviously he was proven right, even if he had a hand in it. The alternative history where Dr. J becomes the GM of the Raptors is a fun one to play out. And they would obviously never make this a part of the Hall of Fame discussion or whatever. They would just, you'd be an asshole if you asked about it, but I would love to know their like private thoughts on how do you think that would have worked out? Like, would Vince have lasted with the Raptors? Could you have done a better job, Dr. J?
Yeah. Did Dr. J ever go on to do front office stuff at all?
I don't know. Not in like a GM role, I don't think.
T-Mac, just to add some color to this, T-Mac has been on the record saying he thinks that they should have stayed together and they would have won championships, right? That was maybe like 6-7 years ago. Here's a word that I want to get everybody's pronunciation on: acromioclavicular joint.
You want to know how to pronounce that, Samson? AC joint.
Yeah. You put MC joint in your first tweet.
And that's why I did a
joint. Yeah.
I know, that's why I did it was just a typo. That's why I did a follow-up tweet. So the AC joint is this thing here that connects your scapula to your collarbone.
Yes.
And I dislocated my shoulder like playing hockey back in the day, and it still makes a clicky sound. So I know I'm very familiar with that joint and it popping out and stuff like that. But the good news, if you're hoping for like a quick return for him, is it's not a subluxation, which is what like DeLon and Norm had in their shoulder back in the day, that I think for both of them eventually required surgery.
So I saw a lot of testimonials. Basically, that's my favorite thing, the testimonials from everybody who's had that, like you just said. But and then hockey players, rugby players, everybody saying like, this is how long it is. This is what it takes. A doctor is saying. Have we heard anything from the Raptors? I don't think so. They just said they'd update us in like a week and a half, probably.
Yeah,
correct. And they didn't provide any grade of it, which like you can have grade 1 to grade 3, and then the grade 3 has like a couple different types, because grade 3 is like a full dislocation. I think given the way the Raptors operate, I think they would have just said dislocation if it were dislocated, but
he was wearing a cast. He was wearing a cast.
Yeah, he was slinged up.
Slinged up. Yeah.
Or I guess to appeal to this too, by the way, S, you were closer than any of us. What's any insights on Emmanuel Quickly's wrist?
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that near the end. It did look like one of those situations where, have you ever, this is a weird comment.
My grandma has arthritis. She wears one of those.
I was about to say the same thing. I have an aunt who wears it and I think it's like for carpal tunnel or something. So maybe he's just been letting it fly too much, man. Maybe he's just been shooting the ball too much, Maybe he's training for those 10 threes a game that Trey and Lewis really want him to. Round table, who thinks he's getting 10 a game up? I'm voting no.
Oh, I don't think he does. I think he should. I don't think he
someone's
does.
Gonna have to shoot the ball.
Okay,
that's all I'm gonna say.
Trey,
maybe that should be a goal. Yeah.
The floor is yours. I'd like you to try and convince us why it will happen.
Well, I'll first start with someone's going to have to shoot the ball. They have very few players that actually can create and actually score from a pull-up situation. He's probably the only person you probably want taking a pull-up three on the entire team. And then, also, I'm assuming Scottie is going to take some sort of leap in getting downhill, and he's going to be put a lot more in those situations. And if those trickle up and he actually is able to draw defenses, IQ is also going to get a lot easier looks because, like, heading into last season, he would have had a really hard time speeding up his shot, and a lot of those three-point opportunities were getting taken away. Ideally, he's been working on shooting this entire year, and that's why he's wearing this wristband. But I think better Scottie play and ideally more RJ Barrett leads to more three-pointers for him and easier ones that he doesn't have to speed up.
That was kind of the crux of what Lewis's piece was about, that he lets it fly from the pole at already a pretty elite rate, but he's not as aggressive for the, off ball stuff, which is an interesting juxtaposition because usually that's not the case. Usually guys who like pull like crazy, unless it's like Harden or Luka, they also go pretty crazy as far as like pursuing their off ball stuff. Blake, in your coverage of, a lot of years now of covering the NBA, are there any comps you can think of as far as like shooters who left a lot on the table and didn't ratchet it up, like your Spanish Raptor, Jose Calderon?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. So to go back to Matt Bonner, I was just talking to him about this the other day. I was like, man, how many threes would you have gotten up? Like, now Bonner is before my era of covering it, but like, yeah, how many threes would Matt Bonner get up? And we had Jason Capono on the show this year when it was me and Will and Alex, and Capono didn't qualify for the 3-point percentage leaderboards one time. You had Capono on your team setting like NBA records for 3-point percentage, and he didn't have enough to qualify. But no, I think it is wild. I think the answer honestly is Kyle. Like Kyle in those even in the good years of the Raptors, like the year his first All-Star season, so 2014, 2015, after they'd gotten back to the playoffs, he took 5.5 threes a game, and then that didn't get up above like 7.5 until the run it back year. Obviously, Kyle's role had to change a lot around, DeMar's going to, there was the one season where it's like, well, DeMar's kind of the point guard too now. We're going to trade that back. Oh, Kawhi's here. I got to take a different kind of role in the offense. Oh, Pascal's growing. I got to take a different role. And that's a huge part of Kyle. But I think if you're just looking at a guy who was a very, very good shooter, who you would never have blinked if he took 2 or 3 more threes a game, I think Kyle's a pretty easy answer there.
Yeah. So, and Fred in 2021-22, 9.9. Who's a better shooter, Fred or Emmanuel at the peak of what we understand it now? Fred?
I think it would be Fred. Yeah.
Because
the volume is so much higher.
Yeah, the temps are more difficult.
Yeah, a lot of late. I'd have to dive into the late clock stuff too. But like Fred's, the year he had a bad 3-point shooting year and everyone kind of turned on him, there was like an inordinate amount of late clock attempts too, which are obviously tougher.
I'm going the opposite way. I'm saying it's Emmanuel because he's played fewer minutes. Maybe there's some fatigue stuff there, but his per 36 is not exactly in the same realm as Fred. But his like 3-point percentage, I think, just sits at a better spot. But the difficulty is probably lower for Emmanuel.
Their 3-point percentages are identical for the career. They're both at exactly 37.5.
Let's go.
Can I just say one thing? I think maybe Kyle's finishing ability and like interior scoring in general helped him counteract not necessarily needing to shoot as much, whereas Fred wasn't the best interior scorer, didn't finish around the basket that well. And so that helped. And maybe that means quickly we'll actually end up shifting towards a Fred vibe than a Kyle vibe.
You close your eyes. It's very easy to, Kyle had that little twist, the hip swivel in his jumper, that pump and throw ahead dribble. You can see that in your mind's eye. You don't have Fred's closeout attack in your mind. Like you don't see that. Same with Emmanuel, not yet. Hopefully that's something that does develop. But again, Emmanuel's only 25. He's starting out in a high volume situation. You got something, Blake?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Trey a follow-up. So you were talking about the Quickly's attempts coming off of Scottie versus just the quick pull on his own.
Yeah.
The fact that, I mean, obviously he shot a little bit less on volume when Scottie's on the floor last year, just because Scottie's going to command some possessions. Goes from 7.5 3-point attempts per 36 to 8 when he's not on the floor. Like, how high do you want? Where do you want those numbers? If he's going to get up 10 a game and he was at 7.5 with Scottie and 8 without Scottie, where are the bulk of those extra 2.5, 3 attempts a game going to have to come from?
Ideally, he's leading a bench lineup. I don't think the Raptors are in a situation where they can't have him or Scottie not on the court at any point. So ideally, he's leading a bench lineup that you have a Davion beside him that can help with the defensive responsibilities, and he's putting up shots because right now, unless it's one of barbecue creating the offense, and we saw that in the second half of the season, they're going to continue to just go through their actions, and actions don't really lead to advantages unless there's someone that warrants the defense to actually draw attention. So ideally, he's leading a bench lineup and is able to put up a lot more usage in those minutes.
We can use this as a means to transition, because I've been watching a lot of Scottie Barnes pick and roll stuff, and what's clear from the start of the season to the end is that the structure of how and where they play the shooters, how they move the shooters around those actions, picked up a lot as the season went on. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily play into the 7.5 versus 8 that Blake pointed out, but it does speak to opportunities perhaps being more abound for guys like Grady and IQ over the course of this upcoming season. That brings us into training camp, what we're looking forward to. Trey, we're going to start with you. When you think of this Raptors training camp, and I know you don't think that highly of this team this year, what are you trying to see
the
happen?
greatest of them.
Wow. So now we're lying. We're just lying.
Sorry, say that again.
Okay, so when you think of training camp, what are you trying to see? What do you want to hear? There's an open practice that you can watch if you want, but all the quotes that come out, what do you want to hear about players? What do you want to be developing?
I think in an ideal world, you would want to hear wow, defensively, it looks like they've taken a lead. They're competing really hard. This looks like we have the chance to be an average NBA defense. Well, I think realistically, if one of the reserve guys shows more than what we're expecting, if Ochai goes into training camp and he's been shooting the piss out of the ball, that makes him
he needs the wrist brace.
Yeah. That makes him someone that you can maybe start on this team. Or Davion Mitchell's finally figured out as a shooter. I think someone of that grouping actually becoming a vital shooter makes it a lot easier to put them in place of Grady and have him play in different lineups that are outside of IQ to make sure that the defense is at least tenable.
Okay. S, what are you looking forward to?
I want to hear strength talk. I want to hear Grady found some strength. He's looking strong. Darko gives the quote where it's the 2-week program worked, so you made that tweet about that. I kind of want to hear that. I want to hear that he's developed his body and his strength is looking better and he's looking much stronger on the floor, because I think one issue that happened to him, especially when he got more minutes towards the second half of the season, was that his legs would tire out and he just wasn't ready for 25 plus minutes a game. And so moving into this season, where he likely will get those type of minutes, have to be ready for that, right?
Saw a lot of games go from 3 for 5 from 3. It reached 3 for 8 pretty quickly towards the back end. He'd get some front rim, but also I hope you know that the compliments about putting on size. Darko already gave that to me, brother. We've hit that. But also, if I'm hearing about strength development and that's it, I'm concerned. I'm extremely concerned. Blake, how do you weigh in on this?
This is how I know you guys. This is how I know I'm an old head now. Is I'm not even sure if you guys are aware of the Lang Whitaker, Trey Kirby muscle watch from over the years, where this is everyone's eye is out for this every year in a joking way of every guy's gonna be in the best shape of his life. Every guy I don't want to pick on Chris Boucher, but I'll use him as an example. There have been 4 training camps where he added 10 pounds. And then by the end of the season, he's back to his original weight because that body type can't keep it on or whatever. Every one of these guys, S, is going to give you the quote you want. About,
I can't wait.
I've been in the gym. Like, what you have to hope for is that there's not a Hassan Whiteside situation where being in the gym was just like he did nothing but arms day the whole offseason. Like if Ochai comes back and his biceps are just like this, but nothing else happened, that's not a good sign. We got a 905 trade live on the show, by the way.
Okay,
Ooh.
let's read it out. What is it?
Kobe McEwen for Evan Gilliard. And I'll leave it to you guys to guess which one of those guys was already on the 905.
I'm gonna say Gilliard.
I think Gilliard was on the right.
I'll just go the opposite way.
Yeah, they have acquired Gilliard.
Oh
There you
wow, Kobe
there
McEwen
you go.
gone.
That
Damn.
was when I went to the climbing gym yesterday. One of the
Evan
workers
Gilliard was there.
No, yeah. I got asked about like the 905, and I was like, damn, I really don't know that much right now. A lot of stuff is happening. Maybe we could use this as a quick. Blake, do you have like 3 minutes to update us on the 905 happenings? I know you've paid more attention to this than I have, or S has, or Trey has.
Yeah, it's I mean, so for anyone who saw all those transactions happening, and like I kept them all in one thread because it was funny to me of like, this guy's signed, this guy's waived, he signed, he's waived, he signed, he's waived. So this is a normal thing, but we usually see it at the end of training camp. So these are called Exhibit 10 deals. You do technically have, if a guy signs the Exhibit 10, you can convert him to a two-way. You can have him make the team on a non-guaranteed minimum contract. They're real contracts to try out. But a lot of the times what teams will do, especially at the end of camp, is sign a guy, immediately waive him. And then what that does is if he goes to the 905 and he stays there a certain amount of time, instead of only making 42,000 like you make in the G League, you make like 120,000. So you get like a way elevated G League salary. Still not enough, still nothing compared to like going and playing on a not very good European team, but enough to keep some guys here. So Quincy Guerrier, Dylan Disu or Daisu?
I think it's Dessou.
Okay. And Kennedy Chandler all got the kind of, hey, we're going to sign you and waive you. Those guys cleared waivers. They go to 905 now. So Q will probably, I'd imagine he'll be at camp because it's in Montreal and that's where he's from. And like, why not have him there doing the community stuff? But those guys can't like be in the games or whatever. One of you guys is blowing up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's all right, man.
Too famous.
So that's that side of it. And then Jamias Ramsey, Jalen Roden, Jamison Battle are like actually in camp. Could push Bruno Fernando for that final roster spot. Could push, say, DJ Carton for one of the two-way spots or whatever. So you look at the whole, and you've got the Ramsey, Roden, Battle guys, Carton, Carlson, Shamshi, and then Guerrier, Dessou, Chandler. That's a pretty good starting point for the 905. Now, probably, maybe not all 9 of those guys end up with the 905, but you're in pretty good shape there, and that's before assigning any of the picks down or anything like that.
It's been a long time since the 905 has been like a really fun watch, at least for like that level. This coming from a guy who's seen like, I don't know, 6 games over the past 2 years. So I don't have a huge frame of reference. Cody Wiles is in chat. He would know a lot. Blake, you would know a lot. Trey, I don't know how often you make your way down to Mississauga to watch, but will they get you out there this year?
I think Chamche will get me out. I want to see some like crazy flashes. I want to see, like, he's one of like the fastest bigs I've ever seen like run down the court. I just want to see flashes of that, and I think Shed is like the perfect like G League guard. So I think they're more interesting than they have been in a long time. I think the last time like we've been interested in like the development of a prospect there is probably like Paul Watson, and that was a whole pandemic ago.
They're really trying to run back the 905 championship though, with like Jamal Shed is in the Fred VanVleet role, Shamshe's in the Bruno role, and Mobo's in the Pascal role. They're like, okay, what were the 3 guys we were sending down? How can we most closely approximate them? Now the issue, I guess, was that those 905 teams had a boatload of shooting. So we'll see if any of these guys can be like EJ Singler, but I guess Jamison Battle's got some nice shooting chops there. Yeah. So we'll see.
He had a lot of shots during summer league.
Yeah.
To keep it on like Shamshe and Mobo, maybe not just training camp, because what we've seen from the Raptors over the past however many years is that like training camp usually goes according to plan. The start of the season, usually a lot of the young guys get reps and then they go, and then it's 905 time, and then they kind of operate that way. As far as the Shamshe Mogbo back end big situation. Does anybody have any hard feelings about how that's supposed to look this year? You interviewed Mogbo earlier in the summer. Any big thoughts that you've gleaned or from the film on Mogbo and even Shamshay?
I think Mogbo might be a guy this year who can play on the actual roster. I'd be very curious to see if he gets some 905 run. I think he will. I think he will spend a good amount of time with the 905. But one of the main questions I have with him is how quickly his defense can be impactful on an NBA floor, because the offense is a work in progress, and him developing that feel to like make the reads he does as a playmaker, especially at his size, that stuff will eventually come. But the one question I have is like a guy who has played 4 years in college, clearly has an NBA body. Can that defense translate immediately? Because I think that can be a massive factor for a Raptors team that kind of needs those type of wings almost immediately. And so if he can be a plus defender, not even a plus, but just like a good, solid rookie defender, you're looking at a guy who I'm very, very high on. I mean, hey, we did a podcast a couple of months ago where I was like, this guy is a future all-star.
Yeah, that was
But
crazy.
yeah, I know I jumped out the window with that one. But anyways, I think there's a world in which he's an impactful player in year one out of all the guys that the Raptors are kind of looking at. Yeah, that's probably the one. Also, I know we haven't talked about him, but like Bruno Fernando is an interesting player that might make the roster given where they're at with their front court depth. So maybe he's a guy who steps into a role that some people might think Shamshay is ready for now, but maybe will take a couple of years to be ready for. So I would expect some Bruno Fernandez run if he makes the roster, obviously.
In the chat, Cosmo brings up DJ Carton better be on the roster. That's the quote. I like DJ Carton a lot. I don't think that he'll be on the roster just because of like the Vezenkov, Davion Mitchell trade, having Jacoby, great. Like having everybody in-house there, it makes the route a lot more difficult than what like Jeff Doughton and Javon were facing the past couple of years to getting NBA minutes. But I do like him a lot. And I am wondering, Blake, you've liked small guards for a long time. In the glut of, you know, the G League guys mixed with Davion, mixed with Jamal, is there a favorite in your mind for like some form of position or minutes this season?
I mean, the thing is, like, I could talk myself into any of them, right? And like
Yeah,
with some of these G League guys, like I really do think point guard is the position where the jump is toughest, right? Like you can look at Javon Freeman Liberty, and that guy has a number of NBA skills. I think we all think he's, you know, an NBA caliber guy in a lot of ways. Jeff Doughton's another one, right? Those two guys are different stylistically, but they both have what you would say are safely a number of NBA skills. But as an NBA backup caliber point guard, and there are probably only like 45 to 50 of those guys in the league who are backup caliber and higher. That's why you see these guys churn so much. You have to do so much stuff, or your value off ball has to be so high. So if you're Davion Mitchell, yeah, I mean, you're getting an opportunity because of the contract and the draft stats and stuff like that. But he is like an A1 tier perimeter defender where, okay, if you have to sacrifice something on the ball offensively, you get it a little bit. You know, Jamal Shed's going to get hit with the undersized, but one thing you can always do to make up for being undersized is to be tough as hell, right? Like we've seen that from the guys who make it. They're always the guys eating charges, living in jerseys, taking elbows to the face and stuff like that. And then everyone else in this class of guy, and this applied to Javon and it applied to Doughton, et cetera, is can you shoot? And that's whether that's, you know, shoot off the ball because you're not a good enough pick and roll guy naturally without the threat of that pull up, or, hey, you're not a good enough lead guard. We're going to play you off the ball on offense because you're just not that good at the point guard position. So you're going to have to knock down a ton of shots. So when you look at Carton and it's like, okay, well, in year 3 in the G League, the big change for him was, yeah, there was some attitude stuff. And I have like, I hope he makes the team because I have a planned feature on him around some of this stuff, some of the growth he's done there. But the big thing is like, okay, he became a shooter. Jaden Rhoden, same thing. It's like, okay, people didn't think he can shoot. The shooting development came along a little bit. Now he's reasonably interesting. You know, so I think, you know, Kennedy Chandler is probably a little lower down the list there. Like, I think he's, you know, a good G League guard, which is, we saw last year how bad the absence of good G League guards can be for your G League program. But I think that, with all of these guys, that's going to be the thing. And like, not to go all Malcolm Miller about it, but it's not enough to shoot well in practices and training camp and stuff like that. If you get 5 minutes, you got to knock down your shots. Like, that's unfortunately the sample size is going to be so small for any of these guys that I really do think, knocking down your shots in those small windows is so important. So I like Carton. If he's a 44% 3-point shooter like he was in the G League last year, yeah, no question, he's an NBA guy. If he's like 37% where he was the year before, he's probably not. And that's like, I'm being a little reductive. And Carton showed some growth like as an actual point guard and stuff too. But he's also like a bit of a black box because we just never saw him because he got hurt as soon as he got signed. So Carton's probably the one I am most quote unquote interested in, just given how much he's a mystery after missing a huge chunk of last year. I think Shed is probably the one who I'm like most confident could be like a third point guard, just because the level of like floor general / toughness that's there. Like, I don't think the upside is necessarily like Fred level, but he's got the stuff that gets you to stick and gets a coach's trust. So this is a little wishy-washy, but the whole guard situation is wishy-washy.
I've been looking at I'm kind of catching up to the NFL lately, and I've been looking at stats and watching highlights, a lot of it. And it's insane the way that mediocre quarterbacks stick around. Is there a position like that in the NBA where like as long as you're just like, okay, and people know your name, like you have a spot in the league?
Bigs.
Yeah.
Didn't Frank Kaminsky just re-sign somewhere the other day?
Like, he's on the Suns.
Yeah.
There's just not that many humans that size. And if you're a decent person, you'll be on the team for a long time.
Yeah, Joseph Cassidy says, "Oh shit, Samson found stats. Look at world." Yeah, it turns out you don't have to do your own all the time. People are collecting them for you. I want to ask you, Trey, right before we get out of this guard situation. Blake complimented your scouting abilities earlier on in the podcast. In the amount of college you've watched, there's a lot of like younger guards on this roster. Are there any like past interests you've had that you see on the back end of this? Are there any guys you're like, man, some latent abilities, I believe in it? Is there somebody you think might pop off
amongst the guards or just in general?
Well, if you don't have the guards, then just in general, because if you don't have it, you don't have it.
I was a big fan of Kennedy Chandler. I'll say that.
Okay.
I think he's obviously like struggled like with the size that he has, but he's really quick. He can get in the lane and can make really good reads. I think that's, as a backup point guard, his like assist to turnover ratio needs to be like drastically low for him to actually stick in the NBA, and the shooting has to get better. But the Raptors are a team that like is like devoid of rim pressure, and if you have someone that can actually force people within actions, and Darko seems to really empower the point guards that he has, that would be probably the person I would look at.
Man, can we get Ricky Council on the Raptors? Like, he's rim pressure, just yamming on guys. Okay, anyway. So,
I don't want to go back to the like, we just need rim pressure guys. Like, I feel very 2021 about that, you know?
We're also doing in the same show here, they need shooting so badly and they need rim pressure so badly.
Yeah.
I think we can simplify it here, and they need offense.
They need
so badly here.
They just need good players, yeah.
This is, you know, and it's funny. John Hamilton says Ramsey has a chance. Good defender with the shot, or will the shot come around and stick? Just so everybody knows, there's a tweet from Eric Koreen where he stakes his career as a writer on Jahmi'us Ramsey being an NBA player. I'm keeping my I'm paying attention to this. So I hope he makes it with the Raptors. I don't know if Eric has had the inside track for 9 months and 28 days now, but any thoughts, Blake?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's a very bold thing. Extreme, like, so back in the East, in the year the Raptors made the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time, 2015, 2016, in that Pacers series, I said if they didn't win that series, I would not shave again until they did. I have never felt so nervous in a Game 7 before. I'd imagine that's how Koreen was feeling when Ramsey didn't get his 10-day renewed. What do we think the bar is, though? Like, does he have to play one more NBA game?
Right.
Does the fact that he's on an NBA roster? Like, how do we evaluate this? Because if an Exhibit 10 counts,
it doesn't.
then lots of guys have been in the NBA.
He said it. What, your contract guy? What is the step up from an Exhibit 10?
Being on the team.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Okay,
like
so
a two-way is
a
like
two-way?
generally the path is like you get your exhibit 10, and some guys will just make the team outright, but most teams, if you make it as an exhibit 10, they'd convert you to a two-way because the contract has that option. So
So Oren in chat says, I agree with Eric. He was by far the best guy they plucked the end of last year. The New York Times is watching, which is funny. But also, since Eric tweeted that when he was on a 10-day, I think it means he has to take the next step up. So I guess a two-way technically would count.
although a 10-day you make more bank, like a 10 because
Okay, so you
especially
got to
like
sign a full contract.
Yeah, it has to be standard
Yeah.
deal. Yeah.
Otherwise,
does it
Eric's
have to
finished.
be? So I'm gonna put it at this: he has to make it to he has to make it to January 10th because that's the cut down day where all the contracts become fully guaranteed. But that would mean he made half his contract, which is way more than a two-way makes. Does that seem
Okay.
fair? Cut down day, you got
Shake.
half a season. All right, like
Wow.
Lorenzo, that was the Lorenzo Brown. His year after a two-way, he got $800K guaranteed. January 10th, see you, bud. Go become Spanish somehow and play for the Spanish national team the rest of your career. That's where I'll draw the line.
So we've got Blake for about 15 more minutes. We have a bunch of listener/viewer questions we want to go through. This one from Trevor Norlander, it's quite broad, but I think it's good cannon fodder for conversation. Quote, the starting five is good, but will this be one of the worst bench units in the league scoring wise, especially if Dick is starting? Do you think we'll just see a lot of Scottie plus Ben units to hopefully stem some of that scoring issue? So, end quote. I think it's one of the worst benches in the league, and like it's not close. You like Bruce Brown is injured. You look at the guys that are on that bench. Kelly, I don't know what happens with Kelly, but like, damn, the Olympics looked rough. And the Olympics, it's a smaller court. It's supposed to benefit like more rough and more of those, I guess, bigs with some skill to input themselves in those games. He just looked lost on both ends of the floor. I'm worried about that. Bruce being injured, he's not had the best start. You know, Hoop Goose was in chat earlier. Obviously, there's a reckoning there, but he's a good player who isn't playing. Ochai struggled a bunch. Like, Blake, we'll start with you. Thoughts on the five versus the bench? Like, man,
It's going to be a bad bench, right? And I think we're going to see a lot of Scottie plus 4 bench guys because, like, really, you can't shrink the rotation shorter than 9. You're just not going to do that. I think you're going to see a lot of Scottie plus bench. I think you probably see IQ plus RJ plus bench as the other kind of transitional unit as a core one. The interesting thing to me is, like, how are they going to use Kelly? And what does that mean for who the other backup big is? Like, if they're like, we absolutely can't trust Kelly as a center defensively, does that mean Mogbo has a path to being a small center defensively? Is Scottie the point guard on offense and the center on defense? Is there, does that create a role for Bruno Fernando? I don't really know how it's going to look. Like, all their bench pieces are such one-way players where it's like you could have a bench that has Ochai and Davion Mitchell and you think, oh, this is going to be a really good defensive bench. And then like Kelly's the center and it comes apart. So I agree that it's going to, I don't know about the worst, but it's going to be like, it would not surprise me if this is, say, a 35-win team and the starters finish the season with like a pretty good plus minus. And people are like, how didn't they win more games? It's like, well, because it's a big deal that Bruce Brown and Jacoby Walter are hurt right now because it looks like they have no bench now. And those guys are not, star level guys.
that starting lineup is winning minutes.
Yeah.
Like I feel like no ifs, ands, or buts. But you hit on something, Blake. I'm gonna toss this if anybody's heard anything, because Will Smith in chat brings this up. Says maybe Boucher actually plays. What the hell is going on with Chris Boucher?
No idea.
Bueller, anybody?
I don't know. And yeah, sorry. I just want to acknowledge Oren made a point in the chat as well regarding Kelly that it's easier to hide some stuff defensively in the NBA than in FIBA. Absolutely. It's a great point. There's more you can do scheme wise and positional switch wise. But it also looked really bad last year down the stretch as well on that end.
It's easier to, but more so what I meant when I said that, just like Oren is correct. Usually people get hunted in posts and seals like in FIBA, and that shouldn't hurt Kelly that bad in FIBA, but pick and roll is way easier to guard in FIBA. And that just, none of it's looked good, unfortunately.
So I don't know with Boucher is the answer. Like, obviously, like I can say this much, like it was pretty clear from their personnel choices in the first half of last year that they considered Boucher part of the teardown, right? Like he's the longest tenured guy. I think if they could have got a reasonable second for him last year, they would have made that trade. And that's why he wasn't playing. And then he comes back at the very end of the season and is awesome again and then gets hurt. It sucks. I really hope he's got a shot at minutes here. I think he makes some sense in those bench units. I just think he's like a good dude and a good bench player. And like, I'm not a big believer in like showcasing for trades in the NBA because every team has so much information and like you know the personnel in the NBA so well, but like to be able to be like, yeah, hey, he's still here and he's still an energy big. I don't know. There are a lot of reasons to convince me to play Chris Boucher. I guess to Will's point though, I've kind of just assumed he wasn't going to be in the rotation mix because how last year went.
So the Scottie plus bench stuff, I just looked it up on Cleaning the Glass. So we have, without any of IQ, Jakob, OG, RJ, Pascal, Dennis, we have 541 possessions. So this isn't a knock on Scottie. This is
No.
But it's the third percentile minus almost 18 points per 100 possessions. That's rough.
Yeah.
But Scottie at his peak, and we saw it at the start of the year, started kind of like rolling the boulder up the hill, getting like improving it. But then obviously the season took a turn for the worse, and Scottie, all that kind of stuff happened. But like, daggum, man, I'm not exactly sure how they'll navigate that stuff. But as Blake said, probably we're looking at like RJ plus IQ stuff. You have to be pretty creative. Another question was, and we'll start with you, S, because you're pretty optimistic sometimes.
I was gonna say Boucher was not there today, by the way. A lot of Raptors were there today. There were a few
Scottie
guys
wasn't
missing.
there
Scottie
either,
wasn't
right?
there. Yes, Scottie wasn't
So
there.
neither Scottie or Boucher are playing this year.
We'll get minutes. Yeah, no, they're both cut. Yeah. Okay, what's the optimistic question?
So from Jacob Sim, do you see a world where we are the top 6 in the East this year?
No. Okay. Well, there are multiple things that have to swing very correctly. Scottie has to become an all-NBA player. Emmanuel quickly has to put himself in near all-star consideration. Davion Mitchell has to be, well within the rotation, like 6-man, 25 minutes a night type of guy who can consistently produce for you on that end. I mean, Grady has to be a spark, but also a guy who can slot into the starting lineup in a really, profound way and do what he did in the second half of the season. Like if all of those things go right and RJ puts up the same numbers he did last year on the same efficiency, then you could convince me that maybe possibly they are a top 6 team in the East. But that's a lot of things that have to go right. Like that's everything goes right.
That might not even do it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. If they invent 0-calorie beer, maybe I'll look like, oh, shy. Sure. If we're just doing crazy outlandish ifs here,
Yeah. It's hard, man. I could see them very easily, especially because of how bad the bottom of the Eastern Conference is, like sliding into the 10th seed or 9th seed. But given where they're at, and I think what they might end up prioritizing in the second half of the season, I would be very surprised if they look at this and they're like, okay, we are, 5 games, 6 games, maybe 7 games towards an 8th seed and maybe 4 games to near top lottery odds. I wonder if they would have to go the other way than go for the 6th seed,
Well, here's a relevant piece of information with that too, is like when they have to make that decision, their schedule, and I'm not a big like preseason strength of schedule guy because who knows how much teams change year to year and stuff and injuries, but their last 20 games or so of schedule is so bad. And you can look at that one of 2 ways, is like, well, if you're close, maybe you'll make up a bunch of games because you're playing Charlotte and the Nets every second night. But also, like, if you were going to try to rise up the tanking standings, those are the games that you need to lose to rise up. So I don't know what to make of that, of like, you could be looking down a lighter final 15 or 20 games that could push you into a play-in spot or push you back into the lottery. I don't know how that'll make it up. It's certainly a tougher start to the season.
So Blake has like 3 minutes before he goes. So we'll make sure we do the fun ones. We'll talk team building once he's gone. So S, this was your question. If you guys were pro wrestlers, what would your stage name be? I said Birds of War. Trey referenced the All black wrestling
Nation
crew.
domination.
Hey, hang on. Not all black. Owen Hart was in the Nation of Domination.
Oh, okay.
That's what it was a joke.
Samson, one of us can get in the Nation of Domination. That's it.
I don't feel particularly dominant. I think that's maybe you. I'd have to be some sort of offshoot. But do we have a name for all three of us? Is there something that works? Did anybody workshop this? Has anybody thought of
No,
it?
I didn't look at the questions ahead of time. I'm
Blake,
sorry.
okay, what about individually? What do you think your wrestling name would be?
So this is tough because like I commentate wrestling like
Yeah.
as a side thing, and like one of the things people have asked is like, "What's your name gonna be?" I'm like, I'm already established as Blake Murphy. Like Monday Night Raw just hired a new commentator, and like a lot of the times they will change the commentator's name to something that's more like wrestling. But like everybody already knows Joe Tess from college football on bot. Like he's the voice of Fight Night on PlayStation. You're not going to change Joe Tessitore's name. So I don't know. I think I'd be stuck. Unfortunately, I just have to come up with like a good like nickname or something like that to go along with it. I'm stuck. When I used to like, this is not very creative, but in video games, if I make myself, so my actual name is Edward, and Blake is my middle name, so I would go by Eddie Blake because I just thought it sounded a little sharper than Blake.
Murphy's Law in chat.
Murphy's Law is
well,
good.
Murphy's Law is more of a finishing move name than your character name.
Okay,
yeah.
That's pretty good.
I would
Jerry
say,
Lawler, Sophia can buzz off. Until I'm like canceled 40 times for age inappropriate relationships. No Jerry Lawler comps, please.
Jesus Christ.
Trey, I want you to dive back into your childhood. You've thought about this, and don't lie to me. You were there when John Cena announced his retirement. You shed tears.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So, all I would say, if it was 2002, Vince McMahon would name me Trey Money.
If it was 2002, Vince would say some inappropriate things to you on camera.
Yes.
Oh,
Trey, have you started that documentary yet?
I've watched the whole thing.
Yeah, how was it?
They didn't say any new information, but like Vince McMahon's like commentary on the information is hilarious. Like they brought up CTE, and he's like, "Well, what does that have to do with me?" And I laughed.
All right.
Blake, anything you want to say before you pop out of here?
Nah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to spending some time with you. Wait, S is going to Montreal. Samson's going to Montreal. Trey, you're not?
No, still
you got the dislocated ankle. You know?
VRL didn't have accessible seating. What's we need to get in their mentions or what?
The fellas actually came, I think, last weekend to like take me out of the house, and like I realized in the moment, I was like, this is the first time I felt air in like a month.
Man, well, heal up soon, man. Looking forward to seeing you guys. Thanks for having me on.
First, we'll play basketball. We're in Montreal.
Yeah, we're gonna get some court time or what? We should find out what our numbers are. Like I think Will and Alex are out there too. I think like I don't know if we can get Grange to play. Last time I played him, he gave me buckets badly. So
I've asked Grange about 18 million times. It's always no.
Yeah, it's I have played with him before though. He's still like, I don't think he wants to like come bang in the post anymore or anything like that. But he's got a good jumper. It's like he was like, obviously there's a size mismatch between me and Grange played like Canadian college ball. But yeah, he like, and I'm pretty physical in the post. I'll defend and like, bet that people aren't going to call fouls on me. And then he just like decided at one point, and I think this is during the championship run in Milwaukee. He decided at some point, like, I'm just going to step out and shoot over top of Blake because, you can't toughness your way to long arms. It doesn't work that way.
He saw the boxing videos. He doesn't want to mess around with it.
That's newer. That's
Murphy's
newer.
Law.
Only you get those. I don't post those on main. I just want you're climbing stuff, and I'm like, okay, when you come down from that mountain, this is what's waiting, man.
That's
also Chelsea asked about where Brody is. He's right there behind me, Chelsea.
Hell yeah. Oh, she also asked, do you have a prediction for the Liberty series?
Libs in 5.
Okay. Hell yeah. All right.
It is best of 5 for the second round, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying about the election too. Libs in 5. So.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, see you guys.
True. All right, scram. Get out of here. Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. We are back to the 3 men. We're still answering questions. We're still talking about the Raptors. So Blake wouldn't pull punches here, but it's an interesting conversation to have once he's gone because he works for Sportsnet. From Maddie, what are your initial thoughts of supervillain and General Knobhead Ed Rogers having the controlling stake of MLSE and the Raptors. Do we have any thoughts there? Oh, S.
I have no.
Trey and I.
I have no thought whatsoever. I have absolutely no thought.
Okay.
Listen. Rogers is a great provider and communicate. Whatever. No. Yeah.
All right.
That was so. Speaking of like S and I, we were both like, hey, maybe we do the Raptor show with Blake. But on my episode with Will, the news about the WNBA team dropped. Shireen Ahmed came on, and we all roasted the hell out of Ed. And I was like, it's not happening for me, brother. No, I'm just kidding. But does anybody, like, I know Nabil isn't here to break down the financial aspect of it all. He'll tell us afterwards. But Trey, you're probably the closest to this. I know you're a little sick.
I'll just say, like, if my internet turns off in a second, you know who it is. But, like, honestly, like, monopolizing, like, any business, obviously, horrible. I
they
think
should make a law against that.
I feel like no. But obviously, like, especially for you wanting to, like, have regulation around pricing and things of that nature, and obviously, like, who controls who, like, disseminates information about the team, having all having it controlled by all of one person, like all of or entity, is obviously horrible. But if they bring a team to the NFL, like,
I was about to ask you that. I was gonna ask you that. I was gonna say, hey,
from a 10 to a 7.
Yeah, if they can buy you with the NFL,
they could definitely buy me with the NFL team.
Okay, all right.
My Rogers contract will get renewed.
Damn. All right. Wait, you're on Rogers right now?
Yeah.
Damn, I'm not on anything right now. I don't have cable. I guess technically I have internet, which is Bell. Okay. I have Bell internet, but I didn't decide that. Yeah, Will Smith says that's what the provincial government wants. Well, you know what? I say we fight against it, brother.
They want an underground tunnel too, apparently.
This is the stupidest thing, man. I've never cared about basketball as much as I care about public transport, okay? Yeah. Every study suggests that you don't help traffic by building another lane. Yeah. You have to divert the traffic from vehicles into buses, subways, bikes,
trains,
etc.
Please.
I love trains so much. Anything you want to say about MLSE before we move on to something else?
I will say, you know what? From what I've like asked around to see how the change of sale would impact broadcast stuff, and literally nothing at all. Like, they're assuming everything stays the exact same and broadcast rights are the same and all that jazz. So we'll see if that changes.
You watch Succession. One side that's more powerful than the other.
Also, this is what I want to talk. S and I will be podcasting from training camp, just as a note to everybody. And Trey will sadly be dropping from the Pull Up Trey podcast for a week. But I know, obviously, I quite respect your stance on this, that you don't want to put stuff out that would jeopardize and like jump up ticket sales for what is going to be a big upcoming year. Yeah. But you've been a little savant for this kind of stuff. Outside of the Vince retirement, is there anything you feel comfortable speaking on? Anything that you think is of note?
Okay, well, obviously everybody by now knows Vince November 2nd versus Sacramento is the retirement. I think we saw a couple of the courts that they had on display today at the park, not the one with Vince dunking, but the one that they used outside of that. That will be in use in the arena at some point this season. That will be there.
Wow.
Yeah, so that one's gonna be there at some point. They have a couple of different courts that they're gonna show. By the way, he's gonna tweet this out. Source, very nice. Yeah, there's a couple of different courts that they're gonna obviously debut. I know there's the in-season court that most people saw online, but also a kind of Raptors throwback court that they're gonna bring. They're going to do a Dunkiversary, for February 12th, I believe, for the slam dunk contest, honoring Vince's slam dunk win. I don't know exactly what that entails, but that will be another game.
I got to start jump training. February 12th, man. Holy smokes.
Hey, do you think shocking your calves works also, as a side note? People used to do that. So in high school, people used to shock their calves so they could dunk. Yeah.
You
And
never
I'm
been
wondering-
around the kid that just wore the knee
The
weights?
ankle weights.
The ankle weights, yeah.
Ankle weights.
Yeah.
Ankle weights makes like that's DeMar's story too from grade 6 onward, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I've dunked. Trey has dunked. Have
I
you
have not.
shocked? Have you
No.
shocked your
No,
calves?
I
just
have
did
been
the jump
shocking my
training.
ankle. I've been shocking my ankle to get better quicker, but it's different
And that
story.
works?
It works well, brother. Scar tissue is destroyed like that. We're cooking. It's
Whoa.
crazy. Yeah, man. Putting you
Is this
on, man.
like like astrology mommy stuff, or is this
No,
like
no.
verifying?
This is physio. This is look. You guys weren't acupuncture believers, right? You two were like, I don't know. Yeah. Wait till you get to physio.
Josh,
okay?
Josh,
Wait till you
J
get-
Code says shocking calves don't work. Also, Cosmo says Ryan Russillo dunked for the first time at age 45. I don't
Wow.
believe that.
What?
Is there video of
How
that?
tall is Ryan Russillo? Wait, you guys keep talking. Tell us about this shocking calves thing. I have to look.
Yeah. So look, dude, you remember you we grew up at the same time, Trey. Dudes were like shocking their calves all the time, right?
They were, but like there were already people that I was like, either like they're already really explosive or like this person has no chance to ever touch.
They're like my height. You know what I mean? It's like there's no way this dude is gonna be able to.
I feel like you had like a window between 15 to 17 to be a dunk.
No, bro. I was so happy when I would touch the backboard on layups. I would feel nice as hell, man. That was I can't do that anymore though.
Well,
We tried, remember?
Josh is in chat. Tapping glass is like that's a rite of passage in the Filipino community. That's like a big deal. Cosmo. I just looked this up talking about Ryan Russillo. He said this on his podcast, his podcast opener this week, and apparently he's 6'3". So there's a Reddit thread.
Is Val? He could probably dunk.
You got to be able to still jump.
He looks. How do I say this? Wide. Like it's like you can be in really good shape. Like when I could dunk, I couldn't run a marathon. I push more weight now than when I could dunk. I'm like functionally I can do calisthenic stuff more than when I could dunk, but I was just lighter then. So like Russillo seems like that's like a heavy set dunker. Show it to Josh, heavyweight climber in chat. I'm so sorry, Josh. It's a reference for him only. I promise. Anyway, I'd be very shocked if Ryan Russillo dunked. Anyway, and yes, Josh has dunked. Matt Stevens asked, how's Key at hooping? Hit 2 threes in the last Brody League game.
Yeah.
Liberal says, I like that name, Liberal as well. Says, I used to be able to touch rim for about 1 year, but I'm 5'9". That's good. Okay, I got to get back to some of these questions. So Stevie says, what position do you see Mogbo ultimately playing most of his minutes at? I want to see a lineup of him at the 4 with Scottie at the 3. This is really interesting because I think the thing outside of his own development or whatever, Josh said, bro, outside of Mogbo's own development, I think is where he's played. I think it has a huge swing factor on how he's used. Trey, do you have any thoughts as far as
I think it has to be the 4. Just because he doesn't have the same vertical pop as like a Precious did, and his 5 minutes are still somewhat shaky, I would assume. The weird thing with Mogbo and like Scottie playing together, although they're like very close friends, I don't see the basketball fit personally. Just because both of them are much more viable and valuable with the ball in their hands, and although Mogbo could develop into like obviously an explosive cutter, a guy that can be a really good play finisher, I don't think that's going to warrant defenses coming out against both of them. They would need like a lot of shooting around them for it to work. I think Mogbo thrives, and I hope like his 905 role is him grabbing the ball, pushing in fast break, a lot of the stuff that you saw Scottie do and succeed with, and then like offensively. In summer league, you kind of saw him like struggle to understanding like the spacing, and he didn't get the ball obviously either. But if he can become one of the best cutters on the team and is able to actually fill up space, he has enough pop to be a good vertical finisher.
Yep.
So I think him being a really hyperactive 4 and winning those minutes is like most viable for him.
So this is something I've talked about on the pod. You've heard me say this too many times, both of you probably, and listeners get ready to hear it again. Well, 2 things actually. Mogbo being a guy in a Raptors offense that really prioritizes cutting, screening, sealing, there is potential for him to get in on the offense without a lot of on-ball skills or shooting. And you know why? Ochai Agbaji was able to do just like Happy Gilmore achieved that feat earlier today, or whatever the hell it is. And on top of that, as far as Mogbo and Scottie, and again, I've said this before, but Quickly and Scottie, that partnership, which you just did a video on which was great, but that partnership developing requires either a lot of skill development from Quickly or Scottie just being willing to carry that partnership. And I think the same goes for Mogbo. If Scottie is really comfortable just kind of like hanging out at the 3 and making plays and being dominant there, then it's easy, I think, for Mogbo to fit into the 4. I think it's inherent, but that requires a lot from Scottie and like nothing from Mogbo. And a lot of the stuff that Quickly needs from Scottie is like, well, Scottie, I need you to be like a good screen setter. I need you to do all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, well, Scottie's a star.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily his job to be like a dynamite screen setter for Quickly, but some stars do that kind of stuff. And Scottie, I think, is more likely to pick up the slack for teammates than a lot of other stars. It's just in his game. But I think that is interesting. But I would Mogbo at the 4 ultimately, I think, is the easiest fit for him.
I think he will be paired with Kelly. I think Cosmo mentioned this as well, but I do think he will be paired with Kelly Olynyk a lot. One of the reasons Ochai really popped as a cutter was because a guy like Kelly was a willing passer, and he would find a moving Ochai.
Split action.
Yeah, right. Every single time. I think, maybe one of the most common bench lineups we'll see is with those two, and then the IQ RJ group that you mentioned kind of running with that second unit. I'm curious to see if we get Scottie Kelly minutes, because I think that will also be successful in a similar vein. But ultimately, look, if you have Mogbo, you hope that maybe some of the defensive pop that he has can compensate for what Kelly doesn't have on the defensive end. And when you have Davion, you have Ochai, you have Mogbo, maybe the offensive spacing gets wonky, and it probably will. But you hope that some of the it definitely will. But you hope that some of the cutting, split action stuff that they do will somehow compensate for that.
That's the hope. I've got 2 more questions on the docket for us. One is from Pascal Propaganda. The other is from Nabil. Nabil asks, my serious question is, we got proof of concept of the Darko offensive post-deadline acquisition of the team. How do you think his defensive scheme is tinkered with or not with a full training camp coming up?
It's a good question. That is
what is this team going to try and do? Do we have any expectations?
That's like the main thing I'm writing about next week, so I have no idea. I'm very curious about that too. I have no idea.
Yeah. I would assume that they're going to lean very heavily on Scottie and Jakob being 2 of the best like rim protecting combos like in the league, and they're going to try to ice everything and allow teams to get in the paint, and hoping Scottie is a sweeper and Jakob's deterrence leads to misses, because I just can't see a world where they're trying to play straight up with like an Emmanuel Quickly, Grady Dick defensive lineup. It just leads to easy blow-bys and much harder for like someone like Jakob to recover in those positions.
So
that's interesting, man. I'm sorry, Samson. Go ahead if you.
No, you go.
Because there's a world in which they play more conservative and, like you say, have Jakob and Scottie just kind of rim attempts, right, consuming them. But maybe there's a world where a guy like Davion, who is very great at chasing over screens and hounding ball handlers, and a guy like Ochai who can plug in and do similar things, can make your defense more tenable. I think there's a world in which IQ can be better next to those guys defensively too. But then the offense is what becomes the question. And so I think it's going to be a give and take of how they're going to be able to maximize on the defensive end without giving up what they are so intrinsically good at on the offensive end. And I don't know how they do that really, but
yeah. What Trey brought up, I think, is really important. I don't know. Davion obviously can. If you're icing, you're probably weakening a lot of the time. It's not actually like it sounds really intuitive. NBA guards, even the ones who don't shoot very well, it's tough. It's tough to weak them. It takes a lot of effort. You have to fight them up the court. You have to play deny and ball pressure at basically the same time. I love that defense when they're capable of doing it. I don't know if IQ has the stuff for that, but if they were able to pull it off, if IQ could do it, I think Trey's really onto something. I think that works. And John Hamilton in chat says, can't Davion and IQ work together on point attack defense? Certainly they can. And I think that's the Raptors' best defensive lineup is Davion guarding ones, IQ guarding twos. But as S brought up, there are questions about how the offense succeeds. Now, some of that can be papered over with a decent, standstill jump shot from Davion, maybe a bit more of that into the lane drive and kick stuff from Davion that supports the rest of, let's say, the starting lineup, a closing five. Like there's 18% chance that that's the Raptors' favorite closing five this year. Who knows?
I like it. Yeah.
It's really interesting to think about like how that might shake out, because there's how you want to play and there's what your personnel can do.
Yep.
And I think I'm in the middle of the both of you there, in that I think like they will try to play aggressive at the point of attack, will reel it back with some players. And by the middle of the season, I think like guys like Davion will be, and Jamal, if he's playing, like Shed, if he's playing, they go hard, they weak, they ice a lot of stuff. With IQ, since they have Scottie and Yaka back there, we might see lock and trail. They might just make it easier on those guys. It's like, okay, just try and be in the vicinity. And IQ, if you play lock and trail, it does allow you to play passing lanes from behind rather than trying to stick. So that might lean more so into him. But, lock and trail and drop is not like the most popular thing, although I do really like that defense. The last question that we have is a two-parter from Pascal Propaganda, but I understand what you're asking about the 2025 class. I don't have any more draft stuff in me at this point in time. We will revisit this. But part two of your question was, which past or present Raptor do you think would have the best chance of going pro in another sport? This is a good question. This is a fun question. Who has the juice? Is it Vince?
Oh, yeah, he could be the wide receiver.
Yeah, Vince is a wide receiver. That's
Calvin Johnson, man. I was watching his highlights today.
Just freak.
Do you guys think Kawhi could do something? Like, let me ask you guys a question. You guys are baseball people. Do you need big hands for baseball, or small hands are better for baseball?
Big hands, like long fingers, help you manipulate the ball as a pitcher. It can put more spin on the ball. So there's like that, but Kawhi, I don't think would have been a pitcher.
So that's not, okay. All right.
Pitcher, like it's hard to look at anybody and say they'd be a pitcher.
A good
It's such a baseball is such, no other sport besides cricket, I guess, is like baseball and like what it combines and what it asks of you. That's why like David Ortiz had one of his best seasons at 40 when he weighed like an insane amount of weight and he was just Big Papi was doing his thing. I think maybe Vince.
Oh, Davion Mitchell could 100% play in the NFL.
Corner.
Cornerback, running back. His burst is like NFL.
True.
And he can like the way he plays defense is like very like symmetrical to how you would be like in the NFL.
So he could have been Brandon Browner.
Yes.
Like he could have had that. He could have snatched it away in a second. Yep. I'm jamming him at the line. I'm talking trash.
He would have been a fairly large corner.
Yeah. Pretty good. He also could have been a running back.
Yeah, he totally could have been a running back. He's got the quick speed.
Makai is built similarly.
Yes.
Not only to his family in the NFL, but to Davion Mitchell.
Could anyone
the horse chest, hit the A gap, coming through on the other side. The hands slide off the thighs. Get off me. Cody Wild said, "Could anyone play soccer?"
Pascal, I guess.
No shot.
Come on, give it to him.
No
give it
shot.
to him.
That's like a sport you need to play like really young and play the entire time.
Pascal probably did that though.
Too tall,
Pascal,
bro.
Pascal wanted. No. Here's the thing. Pascal wanted to play soccer. He couldn't.
And they're like,
he wasn't good enough. That's what he said. Josh says Joey Graham for tight end.
He's built like it.
Yeah.
That's true.
Probably would have had more success, honestly, if he was.
Man, I was so sick about that pick.
Yeah, man, tough. That's Vince, by the way. That pick was from the Vince trade. So
The gift I kept giving.
Yeah. Migraines. Giving migraines. S, before we get out here, anything you want to say?
No, shout out to the Pull Up Tray podcast. Subscribe to
Shout out to
Raptors.
us.
Yeah, shout out
Yes.
to you guys.
Please.
Subscribe to Raptors Republic as always. Shout out to Liberal in the chat. Shout out to Will Smith in the chat. Shout out to Cosmo. Shout out to Josh Codenera. Yeah, shout out to
Sure.
everybody, man. Yeah, why not?
Cody says Mogbo could play tight end.
I could see that.
Too
Yeah.
tall. He's
You,
too
but
tall.
You gotta
could
be able
say
to
that-
block at the line.
You have to
Yeah.
get leverage. He's too tall. Like the tallest you could usually the breaking point's like 6'6" for the NFL.
Yeah.
But then you don't have enough leverage.
Yeah.
So you think LeBron?
OG's brother played for the Ravens, right? Or was he
Yeah.
practice roster? Maybe I can't remember. Yeah, you didn't give Chelsea a shout out. S, kind of rude.
That's all right. That's all right. She'll
Oh,
be okay.
Liberal says shout out to Cosmo who had a super chat unnoticed. Wait. Oh, sorry, Cosmo, a super chat, $5. Thank you very much. Quote: Raptors superlatives: best shooter, best at the rim, finisher, best ISO scorer, best passer, best rim protector, and best point of attack defender on the roster. We will do that before we get out of here. Who is the best shooter? Emmanuel,
Grady
quickly.
Dick. Wow.
Man, IQ, we haven't seen him shoot that great in the NBA.
No.
You gave it to Grady.
I'm giving
immediately?
it. I'm giving it to Grady. Let's go. Let's go.
Wow.
Man. He's
Best-
good. He's gonna be great. He's gonna be great. Yeah.
Best at rim finisher. It's Scottie.
Scottie,
Yeah. It's
Or
I wanted
Jakob.
to say RJ, but
Hey,
It's Jakob, but Jakob takes so many easier shots.
Yeah,
It's
that doesn't-
definitely
yeah,
Scottie.
it's Scottie. Yeah.
For anybody who wants to know, I have a big RJ piece coming out, but RJ on cuts shot 69%.
Nice.
Scottie on cuts shot 76%.
jeez.
Scottie,
Scottie on cuts
Bro,
is crazy. Actually, I
when
have that
he
out right now.
when
Yeah.
he like is stepping towards the rim, nothing changes his path. His
One
legs
point-
just keep moving straight. A guy can be like, I'm here, and his
That's
thigh
nuts.
just poof trucks him. He's a very powerful guy. all of it-
1.5 points per possession on cuts.
Every
mean,
time you
that's
think like
crazy.
Scottie, you have questions about him like not getting to spots on the floor or having trouble with something. A lot of times he just achieves it by being so goddamn strong.
Mhm.
Best ISO scorer. I can tell you who it was. Points per
RJ?
possession
I was
last year.
gonna say RJ.
R-
It was
Barrett.
RJ Barrett.
Yeah, RJ. Yeah.
Is 87th percentile in the NBA or
Mhm.
88th, sorry. But do I think that will hold up next year? Do we think that holds up next year?
It
No,
better.
This year?
It better. I'd hope.
Or else
ideally.
what?
Or else they cook 25 win season, baby. You know.
Okay. The RJ ISOs are the swing. That's the
That
okay.
swings it from 30 to 25.
Wow. Okay. He goes from like 88th percentile to like 74th. You're like, it's
Done.
ruined.
cooked.
It's over.
cooked.
I'm gonna say this year it will be Scottie. Best
Cool.
passer
That's
is
the hope.
Scottie.
Yeah.
That's easy. Best rim protector is Jakob
Jakob, yeah.
still.
It's still
I think.
Jakob. Yeah.
And best point of attack defender. I mean, that's our cornerback. That's
Yeah.
Davion Mitchell.
That's an easy one.
And then probably Ochai.
Yeah, would be next.
Those two things just don't come together, hey?
I'm
Just
praying.
shooting and
and-
point of
yeah.
attack defense.
Ocha not being able to shoot makes no sense. He has so many years in Kansas being able to shoot. Summer League will look good, but
Even
still
if he
got
could
faith.
just hit corner threes, man, be PJ and just
he also needs to finish. He gets so many rim looks that just don't go in. It's absurd.
Yeah, it is a tough one. This is my favorite little stat. The 1 for 22 on shots between 4 and 14 feet.
Brother.
That's like mind bending. That like you're like, whoa, how do you do that? But anyway, that feels like a podcast. There's still 140 people in chat. Like the video before you get out of here.
please do.
And subscribe. We're like right on the brink of 11.1 thousand subscribers. I just
Damn
looked
right.
at the analytics today. But like it because it helps spread to other people who hopefully want to hear what Blake thought, what I think, what S thinks, what Trey thinks. And S and I, we will try and get a live podcast to you after media day on the train to Montreal. Forget what Blake says. Forget that guy. Old news. Old news. And myself and S will have presumably a lot of stuff from training camp. will be live in Montreal.
Oh, yeah.
We're having a slumber party, multiple day slumber party with Louis
You're missing
Sassman.
out, Trey. You're missing out, man.
If only I knew the limitations of my body.
Oh, that's funny. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. And yeah, God bless you. Have a wonderful day. And whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day. And goodbye.